Punk Rock Elite, a podcast about NOFX. Just sometimes you just want a bit more Valuum, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd quite like it to be, what's the word? Like,
sort of boosted in some way.
Yeah, boosted, leveraged.
I'd like an increase in the quantity of Valuum I'm currently receiving.
Absolutely, just not enough Valuum.
There's not enough. Anyway, we'd better get on with the show. This is Punk Rock Elite, the only podcast about NOFX. I haven't checked, but it must be. I didn't even look when we started this, however many years ago, months. Didn't even look to see if there was another one because I thought, what are the odds? Are you looking right now?
I am looking right now.
Well, Red Redmond is looking right now. I'm Eddie French, sending Red Redmond off on wild goose chases.
To be fair, it looks like the only other NOFX podcast is Fat Mike's Fat Mike.
And that's only vicariously about NOFX.
Wait. There's right. Player.fm, which is like a podcast network.
Yes.
They have a rundown of the best NOFX podcasts.
Oh, yes.
This is true. I'm looking at it right now. Number 1, Punk Rock Elite.
No.
Yeah. Well, it's quite funny because I think the second one is the Propaganda podcast.
Right, okay, yeah. Unscripted moment shout out to Greg.
Like, none of the others are NOFX podcasts, but there is a web page saying the best NOFX podcasts, and we are number 1.
We are number 1. Well, I really hope that Greg hears this and proudly proclaims Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda, the second best podcast about NOFX. That actually works in his favour a lot better than ours, I've got to say.
I wonder if we're the second best propaganda podcast.
Oh, I mean, it would only be right, wouldn't it? We've spoken about propaganda, specifically nunts. Oh, no,
we're not listed on that.
No.
But, actually, to be fair, Unscripted Moments is the number 1 propaganda podcast. But then number 2 is, it's just called Propaganda Podcast. And that's the one that's considered the second best NOFX podcast, just Propaganda Podcast, not to be confused with Unscripted Moments.
I'm sorry, Greg. I'm afraid if you've already been updating your socials, you're going to have to wind that back. I'm so sorry. Because, I mean, if I heard that, I would have stopped listening and just started updating everything. But I am overexcitable like that. Well, there you go. According to Player FM, we are the number 1 NOFX podcast.
Absolutely.
I bet Joe Rogan's quaking in his boots. We're coming after his crown.
I really want to see Fat Mike on the Joe Rogan Experience.
It's a strange that he's not really been included on that yet.
I imagine he has no interest in. I mean, like, he doesn't.
I don't know,
he seems to not do like mainstream interviews, right?
True, but I think the fact that he could say precisely what he wanted to would be an appealing thought, and that's very much the backbone of Joe Rogan's podcast brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I'm surprised more punk rockers haven't been on it, but I can't really think of, like, I would imagine like Henry Rollins, and I don't know if he's even been on it, but like,
yeah, you'd have thought that he'd have been a prime candidate for that kind of frank discussion, no holds barred kind of thing.
Yeah, let him talk about, giving albums to kids in Baghdad or that's that sort of music activism he likes to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know because it sort of started out, as I recall, and this is all secondhand stuff because I've not really followed Joe Rogan's podcasting. I've heard a few of them when there's been people who I've been interested in hearing about, but I don't care for Joe Rogan's style of interviewing, so I sort of go, I won't bother. But like normally it's sort of people who do like hard sports, comedians that Joe Rogan knows as friends, and then just sort of fringe lunatics to whom he has given more and more credence to their swivel-eyed babblings. Is loosely what I sort of I say. I could be wrong. I'm sure there are some Joe Rogan historians out there who could tell me precisely why I'm wrong and a cuck. But fair enough. So so there you go. That's well. I'll tell you what. If that wasn't enough to want my Valuum pumped up, then I definitely do now. What have you been up to, Red?
I have been preparing for pantomime because I do pantomime every year.
Oh, you do?
We're currently in the we've cast it. We did a photo shoot a couple of days ago. So yeah, we're all ready for Cinderella at the Contact Theatre in Manchester. I'm writing it as we speak. Oh. Well, not as we speak. We're doing a podcast, but
I was going to say, full attention, please. We don't ask much from you.
But yeah, just crowbarring in as many silly, universal for all ages jokes that I can find
Nice.
into, and increasingly, we're trying to add like a little bit of a feminist element to the story of Cinderella. It's not a story of why she wants to get married. It's a little bit more, 2023 than that. We're following the route that Barbie has laid out in front of us.
Oh, I see. And this is exactly what Ben Shapiro was worried about.
What we are doing with Cinderella is, because we try to loosely theme the music for each panto. So last year we did an 80s panto. Uh-huh. So this one, I'm quite happy because it's my idea. We're doing all the music will be from female singer-songwriters.
Oh, okay.
So I think that'll be quite fun. We've got some, Taylor Swift, some Whitney.
Nice. Yeah.
It's looking good.
The plenty of big sing-along bangers to be had from the female singer-songwriter catalogue. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Have Bonnie Tyler?
I don't know if she's ended up on the final list, but
she was long-listed though.
Absolutely, yeah. Total Eclipse was a part of the mix at some point.
Or would that be too much of a hangover from the 80s one you did last time? Because, I don't know, the power ballad thing, you might want to distance it. It's tricky. I'm thinking about this like people review records, like, derivative of the last one.
Oh, no, Panto reviewers are very much like that. They're they think they're watching opera or something. It's quite funny. But there's always room for one power ballad, and we were torn between a Celine Dion song and something from Bonnie Tyler. I can't remember which one made the final cut.
Was it the All Coming Back to Me?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Written by the same person, I think. I think it's a Jim Steinman. They're both...
Ah!
All Coming Back to Me was originally a duet that he'd written for Meatloaf.
Yeah, well, I think it would be performed as a duet.
I think they did just before Meatloaf passed, or it might have even been after they released a duet version. But that was a Jim Steinman song originally for Meatloaf. So you're supping from the same well.
Yes, very much, very much. So yeah, we're a bit busy working on that. I've got a gig tonight at Gulliver's. It's a pride gig for Sparkle, who are a transgender charity organisation. Obviously, it's Manchester Pride this weekend, so and the show's sold out. So I get to headline this lovely, marvelous, sold out trans show in Manchester
Amazing.
tonight.
And that's Blizzard who are doing that, aren't they?
Yes, it is. Great comedy promotions group. If you're ever in Manchester and you want to see some great comedy, check out Blizzard Comedy. They run some amazing shows all across the city.
Yes, absolutely. And on the day this is released, which is Monday the 28th,
yes.
If you listen to this in the morning, then in the evening you can see on Twitch Blizzard's panel show Avalanche, upon which I will be guest team captain.
That's great.
Yes, I cannot remember who else is on there apart from David Stanier. who I'm always excited to be connected to in any way.
I recently went to a music festival with David, who is a fantastic stand-up comedian, and awkwardly, so it was there's a fancy dress day at Beat Herder, which was the festival we're at, and you have to dress.
The photos.
Yeah, right. So you have to dress up as the letter C, which was this year. Next year it's going to be D, I believe, but this year was C. I found it quite tricky. Me and Kate went as cheerleaders, and then David also came as a cheerleader, but he was like he had a green cheerleader's outfit and we had red cheerleader's outfit, so it was kind of like we're in Bring It On and we were in rival schools.
Nice, I like it. That's precisely what you want from Beat Herder. Is Bring It On happening over there? Yes, I fear it is. Oh no. It's, yeah, good. So there's all that. Fuck it. If I announce it now, then I'll be committed to doing it. I've this over the next however many months, the next year, I suppose, there will be opportunity to see my first solo stand-up show at various festivals around the UK. I can announce it is called Poser.
Yay!
Obviously it is. So if you want to hear any of that, I'll be updating you on where you can come and see that, because it's about time I stopped not doing my own shows and started doing them.
It'd be good as well, like you could include that clip that we got of from the Frank Carter interview and somehow crowbar that into the show, as there is mention of poses in that.
There is, yeah, absolutely. Depends how desperate I get. If people go, I don't think this one's for real. You go, no, look, Frank Turner said the words "very good" after I stopped speaking.
Yeah.
I use that as my ringtone.
Now, I mean, you can put that on your flyers, actually. Very good, Frank Turner.
Very good, Frank Turner.
Absolutely, why not?
Do you know what? People have been less ethical with quotation marks.
I genuinely know someone who, right, one of their press quotes, it says something like a wonderful way with words from the BBC. And they told me, this is all, I'm not going to mention their name, so it's fine.
No, it's all right.
But like,
tell me after, but yeah.
That message, the wonderful way with words, that was a BBC producer texted him that after they were basically having text sex. And the BBC producer said, well, you have a wonderful way with words. And now it's on his posters. I'm like, you can't.
You might have just said, I've just come. The BBC. That's basically what was said.
Right? I mean, that is...
Asterisk, lights, cigarette, asterisk, BBC.
And that is... Now, if you're listening to this podcast, like, it just goes to show, never trust a comedian.
No. No, absolutely not. I mean, fuck, there are many other reasons not to. Not just being unscrupulous with quotations. That's the least of the problems some of these cunts out there have got. Oh my God, I'm wearing I've just seen you're wearing a Dracula t-shirt. And I'm wearing Christopher Lee as Dracula on my t-shirt.
Oh, how exciting.
That's good, isn't it?
That is good.
So, oddly enough, my stand-up show, Poser, is not going to be about how I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, even though that last section would suggest I was, but I'm not. So there's something there. No, I might. Well, there we go. Very good, Frank Turner. That's exciting. Was fun, Karina Denike.
Yeah.
I'm just truncating down the thanks for that. That was fun. Email we received from her after the interview we did with her. So I'm just going to fill this shit up all over the place, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lily from the Meths. So super easy. Fucking hell. I'm going to sell this shit out. Right. I'm going to get back in touch with different festivals and demand a bigger venue. While I do that, let's listen to our past selves talk about Pump Up The Valuum.
Let's.
We're entering the noughties. The heyday of Californian punk rock, the 90s, is over. How does NOFX deal with the new millennium?
Also, they've just released a new music video that we watched yesterday.
Yes, Derby Crashing Your Party.
It's good.
It is good. It's very good indeed. The first I heard about it was that someone was complaining or sort of maligning the video, saying, "Oh, well, apparently Californian punks are rich enough to destroy their own houses for a video." Um, and it turns out, no, well, Mike lives in, he doesn't live in Los Angeles anymore. He lives in Las Vegas because that's where the Punk Rock Museum is. And according to some eagle-eyed viewers, they noticed that the area around his house was already sort of like fenced off, like you do when there's going to be a demolition. So clearly the person who bought the property was going to demolish it anyway. At this point, Mike probably went, can we do that instead? No, sure, whatevs. So a load of punks smash up Six Flogs, as it was called.
Yeah, I love that as well. Like that it's named Six Flogs.
Yes, well, it was sort of a commune. There was like Johnny from Old Man Markley, his wife, and their girlfriend, all lived there, as well as a multitude of other people. So it was, but yeah, it is a great video. I mean, Mike's acting is, I mean, get him in pantomime, mate. If you want some good pantomimic acting, brilliant.
It is very pantomime, actually. You're right.
It's wild. I mean, I kept on hearing like Swanee whistles and stuff, all this stuff. But yeah, great. It's really, really fun. And it's, without giving too much away, I quite like the song as well.
Yes, I quite like the song. Reminded me of stuff that I enjoyed off of First Ditch Effort.
Yes, we'll obviously talk about that by the time we get to double album.
Yes.
But given that we're only at Pump Up The Valuum, you don't hold your breath for that one yet. It'll come, but it'll be a while. So we'll see you on the outro.
Yep.
Released on the 13th of June, 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Making this comfortably 23 years old. Bloody hell. I mean, that was just normal flatus, but it did sound like I was sick in my mouth. Yes, so I think, the last Epitaph release from NOFX.
Ah, okay, cool.
Because at this point they were doing EPs through Fat, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And full lengths through Epitaph. And then, as I recall, they were like, well, we didn't want to leave Epitaph, but when our contract expired, we didn't renew it.
Oh, okay, sure.
They were like, Epitaph have been really, really good to us, so that's why we did it that way. So, they only had an album deal with them, so EPs and stuff with their own business, as is my understanding of it. I could well be wrong. But go on.
I know, like I said, this is NoFX's first album of the millennium, but it was, like, they did start recording it in the 20th century, in, like, 1999.
Yes, they did, yes. Yes, because it was, released in June, so yeah. It comes in at 31 and a half minutes, so sort of decidedly average length for a NoFX album, I think. It's not the shortest, it's certainly not the longest.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It features 14 songs. None of them crack the 3-minute mark. Oh, no, beg your pardon. Theme from a NoFX album does.
Sure.
But outside of that, but that's a little bit different. We'll get to that in due time. Everyone does what you'd expect them to, except the only credit for vocals goes to Fat Mike and Spike from Me First and the Gimme Gimmes.
Oh, okay.
So Melvin's credited as guitar and accordion. Hefe is credited as guitar.
Because I was once again going to compliment the harmonies, like I did on the last full length that we reviewed, but it's Spike.
It is, yep.
From the Gimme Gimme Gimmes. That's cool.
Yes. And he's been in The Swingin' Utters, Filthy Thieving Bastards, The Revolts, and Uke Hunt, which is a ukulele
I thought you'd just
based.
been very rude.
And I was being very rude. Oh my goodness, I've just realised what I've said. Yes, well, very, very rude indeed. You won't get anywhere with that kind of an attitude, I can assure you of that. So, could this be much more sonically different from So Long?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. And is that their last full length at this point?
Yes, I believe
Wow.
so. Yes. Albums. Yes, So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes was released 97, sorry, very late 97. And Pump Up The Valuum was released mid 2000. So been about 2.5 years with the decline in between, and maybe something else, 7-inch or something out.
Because like the Decline sounds sonically quite similar to this.
This is the decline is closer to this than it is So Long, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But like you are right. I mean, like that's a massive change from So Long to this.
I remember this. I think this was the first NoFX release I bought, like on or very close to release day, because everything else we sort of like was like someone I knew had So Long, someone I knew had White Trash, Punk in Drublic, and the live album. And so that was where we sort of all found this. I think I'd bought at least So Long and Punk in Drublic by this point. Oh, and I had someone had taped me White Trash and stuff and listened to the live album a lot. And so this was the first one where, and also because they weren't releasing singles or anything, it was just like the new album is out. So you just went and bought it. There was no hint of what it might be. So, you just go there with your money and go and get it from the basement of the Corn Exchange, where there was a really good record shop where the guy went over to the US like 4 times a year, to just bring back a load of imports. So I may well have an American version of it. I'll probably get up and find it in a moment. And I remember thinking it was very different.
I think it's quite interesting because whilst it must have at the time sounded so different to their previous work, I think this sounds a lot like their I don't think there's much difference sonically between this and like First Ditch Effort, for instance.
First Ditch Effort doesn't have the same level of gain on the guitars. The guitars are cleaner on First Ditch, but I see what you mean. There's a very notable. There is no ska or horns on this.
Oh yeah.
And also, even the My Vagina aside, there's not really sort of comedy songs. Now for something completely similar doesn't sound funny.
Yeah, I agree.
Theme from an NOFX album is, sort of funny, but also it's not really a comedy song. It's the fact that it's got an accordion on it. People sort of go, "Oh, that means it is a joke song," and stuff. And I don't know whether that's entirely the case. It's a little bit of sonic variance over an album that sounds very cohesive.
It's just a little bit of polka.
Sure, when has that never happened on every punk album ever? But yeah, and I think this and Heavy Petting Zoo for me are two of the albums without an absolute banger as the opening track.
Yes, but like
I like Homophobic. I think it is good. I don't have a problem with Now for Something Completely Similar, but with the NoFX strong opening track game that they've only fumbled twice on 14 albums or something, so it's not even a too big a deal really.
I do agree, like it's not like the big banger that sets off a lot of NoFX albums, but I do think that a short little song like this is a nice way to intro an album, and it's, you know, it is a song that I enjoy. I think it's a good intro track. I prefer it to Homophobic.
Yes, so do I. Actually, do I? I don't know. But yeah, but it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't stand on its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
It needs to be the opening track, and if a song needs to be something, I don't know.
No, yeah, that's a good point.
It's my own personal thing. It's not bad in and of itself. It would be weird if it was that similar to the intro to Linoleum and for it not to be mentioned. But so it sort of feels like it was written for the express purpose, which I don't know.
It kind of feels weird that you would record this album with these tracks and not open with Dinosaurs Will Die,
which is a real highlight of this. Although, in fact, I think What's the Matter with Parents Today is fucking brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's such a good song. I've always really, really liked that. It's so sort of weird, but dry. Anyway, let's take it back from the beginning. Take Two Placebos and Call Me Lame.
Yeah, it's a solid song, and I feel like this is like, you know, almost the first full track. You know, the first track just really feels like an intro track, as you said. Like it's kind of there to open the album, but doesn't necessarily stand up by itself. This second track does, and I think it's a good start to like the main meat of the album.
Yeah, and it's got that weird little sort of jazz interlude every now and again. It does have a fucking ripping solo though, so that's exciting.
Yeah, and there's a couple bits in this album where, you know, there are suddenly guitar solos, which I think up until this point there hasn't really been as much. Like I know that there's more in like later NoFX. There's particularly like a couple notable ones on Coaster.
Yeah,
but I'd say like, isn't this like the first time NoFX are really leaning into guitar solos? I know like there has been the odd solo, particularly actually in their early work on like Liberal Animation.
I think this is the first time they let Hefe really rip.
Yeah.
The previous guitarists, I think that I don't know if they sort of demanded more solos or if they, you know, how that worked, but it felt like they got or maybe it was one of those things where they felt there should be a guitar solo.
Yeah,
because they all seem to be. I think they're really leaning into what's serving the song. Does this song need a guitar solo? No. Well, in that case, we'll leave it. You know, apparently there was a big argument when recording Nevermind, when the producer or someone else was arguing that Smells Like Teen Spirit didn't need a guitar solo. And they said, well, we wrote it with a guitar solo, and so it was like, well, no, you don't need that. And I think because a producer was like going, hey, I think it would be a bit more radio if it didn't, you know, then they went, no, well, we're definitely having one then. So I don't know if maybe they weren't bending, you know, they weren't sort of thinking in that more conventional way, perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think yeah, it's weird because there are sort of comedy songs on here, but they're not or songs with like humorous elements, like Take Two Placebos, Clams Have Feelings, all that kind of stuff. Those are songs that are like, there is a point to them. They've got joke titles or like funny titles, but there is actually something a bit more solid going on in there.
I think like
maybe
Fat Mike's sense of humor is probably changing around this point, because there are, you know, novelty humorous songs on this album and the upcoming albums, but they're in a slightly different tone to previous novelty songs.
This is pure speculation, siren. Woo woo. It might be that 2000, Blink-182 were really, really big by now.
Sure.
So maybe the more done a fart and sharted in my skating shorts when I was skating, because I'm a skateboarder, humor might have soured. Not that NoFX were ever quite like that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That more sophomoric or juvenile approach to humor might have maybe even subconsciously made him think, I don't want to do anything too much like that, because we're all probably already getting, these guys think they're Blink-182. Have you seen it? You know, this kind of.
They're kind of like trying to skirt in between, you know, like they're kind of like in between Blink-182 and, you know, Bad Religion. You know, they're not completely serious, but they're having a little bit of fun, but they don't want to be too either side.
Yeah, I think sort of, you know, for the longest time, people would have compared them to like the Vandals, who have obviously got very, very silly songs, well, silly lyrics, you know, and you know I think the Vandals did a whole album called "The Vandals Play Bad Original Country Music," and it was and it was all sort of country style songs, you know, it's sort of that kind of thing. And then, you know, Blink-182 came along, and obviously they've got the silly fun between the songs, and the songs are a bit more, you know, they literally have the word diarrhea in some of their songs. So it's like, you know, it's that kind of thing. So maybe there's something to do with that. But yeah, so, but I mean, you know, sort of take two placebos, and it's got that sort of little jazz breakdown in it, and the wah guitars, which I think, and it's also super fast, which is very exciting, and it's very riffy. Like the riffs at the beginning of it are very much like that. And so I think they're sort of setting out the stall a little bit with now for something completely similar. Now that's a bit tongue in cheek, saying, "Yeah, this is going to sound exactly the same as all our other albums." And it sort of does and doesn't. It sounds like a lot of their albums rather than one single one.
You know what I'm noticing though now, when we get to like this point in their discography, because obviously we've listened to so many of their albums from start to finish.
Yes.
And like I feel like every time I sit down and I'm like, no, this is what a NoFX album should sound like. And they're all completely different, but like they're all, I don't know, there's just something that's quite quintessential again about this one. But I say that about all of the albums.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you're probably very much still right. Well, what's interesting, I've actually just done a little bit of counting. We are at the exact midpoint of full-length album releases. We've had 7 before this, and there are 7 as of recording after this.
Interesting.
So this is, album-wise, their midpoint.
And I think it's also like the album where, look, they've made great albums before this, but I think this is when they can almost take their foot off the gas because they really know what they're doing.
Yes, I don't think take their foot off the gas creatively, but I think they can afford themselves some breathing space to actually do to let themselves do what they know they can do.
Yeah, I feel like they're not like still learning at this point, and I'm sure they'd claim that, you know, you never stop learning.
Yeah,
but like it feels like albums up until this point have been a little experimental, but now I feel like they kind of know what they're doing.
Maybe. I think interesting choice to absolutely eschew all ska and horns and stuff like that. I mean, given how I always think of So Long as being very ska heavy.
It's got their best ska, in my opinion.
It does, yeah, I think so. And also, The Decline was scarless.
Yes.
It had that sort of little jaunty bit, like jink, jink, jinga, jinga, jink, you know, like the sort of Mr. Blue Sky kind of feeling bit. But that lasted like 2.5 bars each time, you know, it's sort of just a little bit of texture. But I think, well, I mean, take so we got What's the Matter with Parents Today, which feels very millennium. It's like it used to be, what's the matter with kids? Kids aren't enjoying stuff. And then in the next album, when we get, when did punk rock become so safe and all of that stuff. But this one is sort of, the parents are behaving more punk than the kids. Punks are finally having kids. And how do kids rebel? They do what their parents don't. But what if the parents were rebelling? And I think it's a very, good song. I really, really like What's the Matter with Parents Today. And Dinosaurs Will Die. I mean, instant classic.
Yeah.
Once this came out, it's the longest track on here, apart from the theme. It's just shy of 3 minutes. It's quite conventional in the verse, chorus, verse sort of thing, and is just about, it's Mike having a go at the music industry, and I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and I love the lines in it. I love the we're going to make an album with more than one good song.
Yeah.
This was around the point as well when I would have been listening to bands like Foo Fighters, who I consider to be a band who puts one good song on an album.
I was talking to my friend Owen about this.
I like their first 2 or 3, but then after that, I think they're...
Yeah, Owen and I, we were discussing this the other day. We've been talking a lot about music and stuff like that, sort of reconnecting after a very long time. And we both sort of said, almost sheepishly, because it's weird to be our age and go, I only really like the first 2 Foo Fighters records, and after that I find them quite boring, with the occasional song that I quite enjoy after it. And the weirdest bit is that all the Foo Fighters, apart from the sadly deceased Taylor Hawkins, all of them were like punk pedigree. They all came from punk bands.
Yeah.
They came from the Germs, Fear, Nirvana, No Use for a Name, Sunny Day Real Estate. All of these, like, they're all coming out of this thing, and they're making some of the most meandering, ponderous fucking... they're clearly delighted to be doing it, and loads of people really, really like it. So what the fuck do I know? But I was just like...
I think when they were at their most popular and selling their most records was like when they were One by One was one of the first albums I bought as a kid. But hey, All My Life's great, but then the rest of the album, and they put that at the start as well. So it's not like there's much to look forward to.
Setting out a very misleading stall. Yeah, but I mean, show me an album that hangs together as well with as many fucking great songs on it as Color and the Shape. It doesn't. Anyway, enough about them. But yeah, so it's and so that there is a lot of, and because it was very single oriented, like the world at the time. Because like when we'll use Blink-182 as an example because they're fresh in my mind. I remember when they released What's My Age Again.
Yeah.
Didn't do much. They released All the Small Things, massive. And then they re-released What's My Age Again in the hope of sort of getting that one to climb back up. I'm like, guys, come on. And I know that they were on like a big label, and I know that...
probably worked.
I'm sure they did. Well, I think they were just like, we already have a single with the video, because the What's My Age Again video was just them running naked down the street. Whereas and I think the video of them making fun of boy bands, which looking back, you think, I know they weren't a boy band, but I mean, glass houses, chaps. You're not throwing stones in there, but you're flicking a couple of pebbles. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're a boy band adjacent. Making fun of all Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and that. I think that had a lot to do with it. If that music video hadn't been so good, hadn't been so sort of effective, I don't know whether that song would have been such a big hit. But
you might be right. Yeah,
I've done no research to work that out. But certainly the video was everywhere.
mm-hmm.
They were on. I remember them being interviewed on like T4, which T4 for anyone who wasn't around in those days or is from a different country. Channel 4, because you can count all of the UK channels on one hand. Channel 4 on Saturday or Sunday mornings, it was sort of youth TV. It was for sort of not for kids, but for sort of teens. And so they'd have interviews with music stars and people from, actors and stuff like that. And these sort of teen interest things. And so T4, Jamie Theakston was interviewing them on the London Eye or the Millennium Wheel or whatever, and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm sure they thought it was weird because they're like, we're just a punk band from nowhere and we're, whether it's San Diego, they're from somewhere like that. And they're sort of being interviewed for UK TV. So it must have been weird for them, I guess. But I've digressed again. Chop all that out. So actually, one of my favorite bits on this whole thing is the several false starts on Thank God It's Monday. Because you just hear the clicks and then they start and they screw up, and they do that twice before getting it right.
I mean, it's a tricky riff to start with.
It is, but I also like the fact that there's no time between the clicks as well. It's like, nope, click, 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 click. I'd had to count then. Start again. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it starts properly. And I think that's really, really cool.
And it starts with the cool little Monday is my favorite time of year.
Yes, a deceptively short song that.
Yes,
1 minute and 40, and it feels like it's longer. Not in a bad way. It feels like there's a lot to it, but yeah.
I feel like that with a lot of NOFX songs, to be fair. They are super short, but they certainly feel like full songs.
Yes. We've got Clamps Have Feelings too. Actually, they don't. It's fine. It's not one of my favourites. We got the final in the Liza and Louise trilogy.
So is there a point in which Mike comes out as a member of the queer community in their discography?
I'm a transvestite.
Oh, so it's like that late, you would say?
Well, you see, I think that this one is... I sort of see when Mike stops talking so much about his love of plus-size lesbians is when it's clear a part of him sort of identifies as a plus-size lesbian.
Yeah, sure.
Not that he does identify. He's a man. He identifies as a man, but certainly I think
I understand what you mean. Like he feels adjacent with that community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's identifies more with them than say a typical bloke, I suppose. Yeah. And all that kind of thing, and I sort of feel like this one feels quite heavy petting zoo in tone, in that it's a little bit slower. I think it's got more of a tune, like melodically and stuff. But this one feels a lot longer than 1 minute 49, and I don't know why. To me, I've always thought that this was like a really long song, and it really isn't.
Yeah, sure.
But did you have any feelings on Louise?
I think it's interesting seeing the progression of Mike's songs about, BDSM and how we started in S&M Airlines with it being sort of like quite joked about and almost like looked down on. And now I feel like
I'll never fly S&M Airlines again because, when this Dom was doing all this stuff to me, I didn't like it. Didn't like it.
Yeah, it's very much like the lady doth protest.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah,
but I feel like now we're getting to a point where he's a lot more accepting of his enjoyment around it, and is letting go of any fear or shame associated with it.
It does, although I think that is in the background of his drug use.
Yes.
Which this is the first time that's come to the fore. I don't think, I mean, for a start, the album title explicitly references Valium, and you've got, Pharmacist's Daughter and Hirowana.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, because I always think like So Long, like Mike sounds quite clean in the way that what he's writing about and generally how he sounds on the album. It sounds like he is potentially living a clean-ish life around then. Not necessarily teetotal, but like at this point, it feels like he's very much leaning into his drug phase.
Yes, and some people feel that there's a decline, ironically. And I think I think he started doing stuff here, and I don't think it reaches the heady heights that it will eventually.
Yeah, because I mean, like I would say this into errorism, but definitely like Coaster.
Yeah,
is like when
has that got I'm an alcoholic on it?
Yes, and First Call.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the hedonistic aspect of it is beginning to appear, which will become a much stronger theme. Because I remember when the banter, the stage banter, changed.
Yeah.
And it became a lot less about, sort of could be about anything, to being about how much he wants to do another line of coke, or how he's not on enough drugs to be doing this show, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And whilst it was still able to be funny, it became a lot more predictable, which I think is a shame, because it used to, you couldn't tell, or it'd be about what they did that day, or anything like that, or like pointing out people in the audience. Yeah, I think that I consider this to be the start of the drug thing, rather than. I think it overshadows the step in Mike's sexuality.
Yes, I think you're right.
But if you know where to look, then you can see the sexuality, that kind of thing. Hello everyone, Eddie here. Red and I hope you're enjoying our show. If you have been and would like to help us make it a little more easily, then you can donate to us at our Ko-fi page, which is ko-fi.com/punkrockelite, or you can look in the show notes for our link tree. If you can't help us financially, we totally understand, but would love it if you spread the word to other people who would like this podcast. We thank you for your continued support. We massively appreciate it. Back to the show. Stranger Than Fishing. It's just about how they're not very good. Fine, I mean, it's a minute long. It's pretty fun, though. The Pharmacist's Daughter, I do like. I think it is a good song musically. And, yep, using a woman to get to her father's stash. It's pretty right on. But, it is very clearly a joke song, and I do like it. I think it is a good one.
Yeah, I'd say I like that. Those are probably the two that, I can take or leave.
They're not standouts.
But you want to sort of like, average songs before we get into Bottles to the Ground, which is,
absolutely a highlight. So, I mean, it's musically, it's kind of leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the album. Just for that sort of slightly syncopated round at the end. One more round, there's one more, and all that stuff. And the harmonies on that are great. And it's, so good.
Yeah, like I do think that there is, and I can understand why people aren't as keen on this, and why people might say that Mike's drug use detracts from the rest of the album. But I actually think if you give it its due and you pay attention, there's plenty of evidence of like decent songwriting, decent production. Everybody's playing their instruments well and to the best of their abilities.
Oh, I don't think this is one of the albums that's sort of tinged by the drug use yet. I think it's become an extra topic rather than the only topic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I remember when the next album came out, War on Errorism. I remember someone asking if I'd heard it, and I said yeah, and they said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't think NOFX should be singing about politics and stuff, really." And I said, "Why not?" I don't know. I think they're just better when they do songs about like smoking weed. I'm like, what weed songs have NOFX got? Who do you think they are? Sublime. It's like. It's just. I'm just like, is that what you think they do? What? Right, point out which ones. Like,
there are songs that mention like smoking weed.
Yeah.
But like,
there's one on this album.
Yeah,
but
course.
It's not. It's not sort of. It's not like literally Green Day, who are named after a day where you don't do anything but smoke weed. For example, there's plenty of weed bands out there, and NOFX are not one of them. But it's just one of those things. People sort of go, "Oh, they do songs about getting pissed and that." I'm like, sort of. I mean, they would go on to do much more drinking songs after War on Errorism, but anyway. Total Bummer. What I like about Total Bummer is it's got one of those really flappy bass intros where the bass strings sound really loose. It's just really funny to me. Don't know why. But yeah, that one's sort of, it's quite melancholy, that one. It's just sort of about...
Is that the mid-tempo one?
No, it's the Go Away Sunny Day.
Oh, yeah.
It's about being ugly and alone. And I'm like, he was married at this point. Again, not all Fat Mike songs are about Fat Mike. So
he does sing from a lot of different people's perspectives, which is, I think, probably what leads to a lot of confusion when people say, "Oh, his songs are about smoking weed." It's like, oh no, he's done songs about someone else who smokes weed.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think if you, I mean, I remember there's a band called China Drum who I love from the Northeast, who are actually just reforming and may well be putting out new stuff. But they underwent a bit of a change after their second album. They rebranded as The Drum and released an album, and I cannot remember the name of it. I can't remember the name of this particular song, but it's basically a song from the perspective of a man perpetrating domestic violence. And I remember sort of having a conversation with someone who goes, "Can't believe he wrote that song about beating his wife." I'm like, well, I don't know if he wrote a song about him doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I get the impression it could be based on a book he read or a film he watched or something, that people do that. And it's like, well, also he had songs, he had a song about someone who was sort of held hostage by burglars while they ransacked his house, and then this guy just hulks out and beats fuck out of him. Like, I don't think that happened to him. If someone's got a history of writing character songs, if you find something really, really quite shocking, Christian Bale didn't behave like Patrick Bateman off screen. Playing a role. It's that kind of thing. So I think I think he doesn't get credit for doing that quite often. Anyway, then we come to my least favorite portion of this album.
Yeah, sure.
My Vagina.
I kind of like, I find it It's weird that you put it here in the album as well. Like normally their silly songs go higher up.
Yeah, it just doesn't sit right. I just sort of it's sort of one of those pondery, ploddy songs that doesn't really. It reminds me the most of Heavy Petting Zoo.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of a less heavy hot dog in a hallway.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's cut from precisely the same cloth.
Mm-hmm.
Shit cloth. But yeah, it's a couple of sort of semi-cute lines in there. I mean, we could analyze this using queer theory, and that would be a disaster. So we maybe won't. But it's sort of.
I do think this is him attempting some sort of connection with the community, but I don't think it reads. I think it's almost as if like he's trying to show some understanding of the transgender community, but then also he's like, yeah, but I am also still like this super cool punk rock dude, so maybe I'll make it a little bit tongue-in-cheek and a bit rude.
Yeah, well, it's got that bit. It's now I get to hang with lesbians. There's also long before it was a topic of conversation. There's a bit. My friends think it's weird, but that doesn't bother me. And I was like, there's a sort of certain level of acceptance being talked about them. Oh, my friends think it's weird, but at no point do my friends think it's disgusting, amoral, and all that kind of thing. It's like, oh, my friends think it's weird, but that doesn't. And then the reason he's not bothered, or she's not bothered in this case, the character's not bothered, is because now I kick their ass from the ladies' tee. And I'm like, is this a song about someone having gender reassignment surgery in order to excel in women's sports? Because that's a very new conversation compared to the age of this, and also, it's not really. It's not how it goes. But I don't think that's been a problem in golf so far.
I mean, my understanding is that the trans women aren't excelling in any particular sporting category.
No, that's. I mean, if I think of all the trans people I know, not athletic.
Well, and I don't want to get into all the politics of it, but my understanding
no, of course, we're a music podcast. Yeah,
usually when issues do arise in sport, they tend to start at the college level, yes. And then that the rules made at a college level then tend to be adapted to higher up professional leagues, and there is currently like no real problem in college sports with transgender athletes. Therefore, we probably shouldn't be pushing through the legislation and policies that we are with mainstream sport, because there doesn't seem to be an endemic problem.
Well, that's very interesting, Red. Thank you for putting that forward. Now, for the sake of balance, we're going to get
BBC.
We're going to get a maniac who doesn't know anything to shout at you for about 3 times as long as you were permitted to speak. Balance.
See,
we're just asking questions.
We're just like the mainstream media.
we're just like all the best bro podcasts. But yeah, so sorry for that little diversion, but we do have we have a dog in the fight, as it were. But I wouldn't, to be honest, I wouldn't mind.
Not that we want to do any sport ever.
Oh God, no. No. We're just absolutely not. No, we just do fall under the umbrella of trans. So I'm quite close to the edge of the umbrella, by the way. Occasionally, I do get a drop of water down the back of my neck. I will point that out. People sort of go, "Do you represent the trans community, Eddie?" I don't want to. No, I think a lot of people are much better at representing it than I. So no, I don't want to do any sports whatsoever. You can have it all, thanks. Gosh, a lot of this is getting cut out. Anyway, so yeah, I just sort of, I don't know if I'd be a bit more on board with it if it wasn't for the fact that I think musically it's just not great.
And also, to give Mike another benefit of the doubt, I can't help but think like this is a song about him wanting a pussy.
Or enjoying the idea, thinking about it for a bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
it's a gateway song to some of his later writing, which does explain his views on this with a little bit more depth.
The sort of the forced feminization kink and those kind of things. Yes, it's a way of letting off some of that steam while still going, ha ha, fannies. Which and that's how these journeys go. We then get possibly the biggest drug song on here. Actually, definitely the biggest drug song on here, Hirowana, which is, from what I can glean, and it's pretty transparent what it's about. It's not hidden one about how drugs are good, but he means it this time.
Yeah, because I was surprised to hear that on NOFX, the EP, when he does Drugs Are Good, it's kind of like a sarcastic song, which to me, it doesn't come across that way.
It doesn't always, but I think when you do, when people think that you're cool, that's the line in it for me that makes it sound like...
But he does think that later in his career.
Yeah, he does.
I swear he sings that with like full conviction on Coaster.
Yeah, I mean, I think he absolutely does. But at that point, at the point of record and release, I maintain that he thought... well, I mean, I do know the story. He basically... something his mum said to him when he was very young was, you're too smart to do drugs. Doing drugs will make you less smart. And then obviously, because your brain doesn't stop growing until you're like 25, 26 or something, if you do drugs before then that changes the way your brain grows, or could do. I don't know if it actually does or not, but that's why he was in his 30s or so before he tried drugs, and then he's like, so that didn't have the effect on me. And I don't know whether there's any science to this, or whether he was told this by a guy who really wanted to sell him some cocaine. It sounds like the sort of thing you'd do if you were desperate to you go, wait a minute, there's a successful professional, rock star over there who doesn't do drugs. Well, somebody's getting a new customer. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Because at this point, he's still talking about weed as well, because he doesn't really like weed. But in this, there's a few songs about smoking weed that he likes. Theme from an NOFX: buy me a Beck's beer or pass me a bong.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And in Hirowana, light the match, burn the flower. I don't think he's talking about heroin, because I don't think he's ever done heroin. But burn the flower, I imagine, would be weed, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know of any other flower drugs.
Yeah, no, because you're right. It would either be that or heroin.
Yeah, it's a very strange extreme that flowers produce. It's like either weed or heroin. The two genders. Anyway, so here on. But I do like. I think but there is actually a point to it. There's a very annoyed point about how it's very easy to buy booze and not. It's a hypocrisy song, about why is it okay to be able to, get huge amounts of scotch, for example, and you can't buy some Coke.
Yeah. And, again, another message that is repeated throughout the later part of NOFX's discography.
I'd go on to say repeated ad nauseum, but but from someone who doesn't do drugs, I suppose it might not cut the same as for people who do enjoy drugs. I think that there comes a point where Mike suddenly settles on just having 3 topics. Which are drugs, kinky sex, and very old punk stories. Or just sort of the punk subculture that he grew up in general. And we're still seeing slightly wider variety of topics being covered at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be a little bit more generous to that. I think he's got a couple more. Like he does songs about the government being bad.
Sure. The political stuff again. The political stuff kind of tails off as well, but at the moment, we're about to get into much more political because, like, War on Errorism was sort of directly political. Wolves is like social commentary writ large with a political bent. And then, what do we get after Wolves? Do we get Coaster after Wolves? Yes. And Coaster, as I recall, is
has less political commentary. Maybe like Snakes and Ladders.
We called it America.
Oh yeah. Blasphemy.
Yeah, Blasphemy and Best God in Show is a bit more sort of atheistic.
Yeah.
Without any sort of... It's not like the Christian right. It's just the Christians, I suppose. But, Eddie, Bruce and Paul, probably the most political statement he's ever made. But, so there is that kind of thing. But anyway, with Pump Up The Valuum, after we've had Hirowana, which I do like. I do like it. I think it is good. I think it starts off with that lovely sort of... It's very tense to begin with. And then when it explodes into the main, happiness can be bought for, that's really great. Like, musically, I think it's wonderful.
And another song that on paper, like I could have sworn was longer than 2 minutes 46.
Yes, it is one of the longer ones on here, actually. But then we... how My Vagina is shorter than Hirowana boggles me. But yeah, and then we finish with a theme from a NOFX album.
Which is, the last song we will have heard NOFX play live in.
It is, yes.
Theory.
The new version with the updated characters. But this is when I started to pay attention to the characters. Or not the characters, but their crew. Because you're like, who are these people doing the voices on it? Who's Limo? Who's, Timmy the Turtle appears on here. All that kind of stuff. So we get right at the end, we get all of their crew, their friends, their family to be hardcore about it. Doing the stuff at the end. And it's, I think it's a very interesting one because, who's written songs about introducing their own band?
Yeah.
It seems...
that a lot of bands do this sort of thing, but, it tends to just appear in the live set. It rarely songs like this actually get added to a studio album.
Yeah, and I just wonder what sort of made you go, right, I think, I'm going to write this polka song about us. Right. Like, okay, yeah, so what we're going to do is, and then, it's got the sort of the close harmony. So yeah, it's a curious song, but I do like it. And then it's...
Do you know if, could Eric Melvin play the accordion before they, wrote this song? Or did he, learn it for this song?
A fine question. I honestly couldn't say.
He must be able to have played it previously, right?
You'd think so, because that's a tall order. I'm just having a look here. It doesn't... it doesn't say on his Wikipedia when he first took his accordion lessons, but sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it's... I think it is fun. I wouldn't use this one to introduce someone to NOFX. Ironically, they're being introduced in the song, but I wouldn't do that. It's because it is sort of... Yeah, it's a funny old one anyway, but yeah.
I would probably play it to someone, if I was taking someone to see NOFX who hadn't seen them before, I'd probably give them a few things to listen to. We've spoke previously about how The Decline is a good way to get someone into kind of like what they do. But I think I would play them theme from a NoFX album to be like, oh, they normally close on this.
Yeah.
It's good for the context of like what they do on stage.
Yes, I suppose it is, isn't it? It's yeah, and I think it gives you some of their attitude because yeah, they're perfectly happy to spend 4 minutes playing a polka song.
Yeah.
And then you know they do their thing. And I think when it does kick in, it is really, really exciting. You've got a nice solo in there as well. Yeah, I think it's yeah, I do like it. But it is yeah, there's just something. I don't know. This album, I remember feeling that this album was very depressing. I don't know why.
I think, and I get what you mean. Like, I wonder, and only Mike can answer this, if he was feeling any sadness at the time. Because I get the feeling that around this part of his career, it's probably a little bit of a transition period. You know, like you're coming out of so long into, you know, the second half of your recording career, and there might be a little bit of like, you know, uncertainty over exactly what route you're going to take, exactly what you're going to write about, you know, what your inspirations are going to be in this second half of your discography. And I wonder if that's causing any anxiety or sadness for him personally.
Perhaps.
Because I kind of know what you mean, and I also hear that sort of sadness on, you know, on War and Errorism, on Coaster, a little bit in Wolves, but less in Wolves.
Yeah, I think First Ditch Effort is a very sad album in a way, but it doesn't feel as maudlin as say Single and Double Album, which are really depressing, and not in a sort of intriguing way, more in a sort of I don't know because
it's the Decline, isn't it?
predicted their own decline, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I've always considered this album to be kind of depressing. Other people may well feel differently, but I don't know why. It could be I've attached how I was feeling at the time. Because let me see, when this came out, June the 13th, 2000. So I would have just turned 17. And I don't know if my general demeanor gives it away, but I'm not someone who's been happy a huge amount of the time. So particularly not in my teen years. So maybe that's got something to do with it. But yeah, anyway. What are your ultimate feeling? What are your highlights of this?
I have to say, like, I know because I feel like we've not been resolutely positive about this album, but I do want to be super clear. Like, this is one of my favorite NoFX albums, and this is one of the albums that I can listen to start to finish. Hey, I might skip my vagina, but like,
sure.
I do listen to this one quite a bit. It's one that I choose to listen to, maybe because I'm less familiar with it than some of their bigger albums and some of my more like my personal favorites.
Yeah,
but it is an album I really like. I love the sound on it, and I feel like it's it sort of like sits right in the middle. I know, obviously we've said earlier, it does literally sit right in the middle of their discography. But in terms
as it
of
currently
like
stands, yeah,
like chronologically, but in terms of like favorite to worst or least favorite, this probably also sits right in the middle for me.
Fair enough. I do like it. I think it's in the top half.
Yeah.
For me, and I do like it. And there's some great stuff on it. What's the Matter with Parents Today? Dinosaurs Will Die. Bottles to the Ground. Those 3 songs alone are absolutely brilliant. But I do like the rest of them as well. Again, My Vagina, I don't really like, but it feels like it could have been left over from Heavy Petting Zoo, which to my mind is not the best thing. But I'm sure there's someone out there who absolutely loves it, and That's great. I'm pleased. But yeah, so it's I tell you what, it got good reviews.
Yes.
Rock Hard, which is a German magazine, gave it 9 out of 10. Punknews.org gave it 4 out of 5. Oxfanzine, again another German. Well, it's Germany. They love NoFX. Give it a favourable review. All Music currently gives it a 4 out of 5.
I feel like at this point in their career, like they're very much established, as in like they've had two, like, you know, really well performing albums in Punk in Drublic and So Long. So
Yep.
at this point, whether you think this, like the music they're making at this point, is better than their previous music, I would have imagined they're probably playing to the biggest audiences that they have.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, no, they're definitely at the highest they've been so far.
Mm.
Rock Sound, which is a UK magazine, they put it at number 17 of the 51 most essential pop punk albums of all time list.
Of all time, wow.
Of all time.
Sure. Okay. I mean, and the only reason I'm like a bit confused by that, I'm like, but where are the other NoFX albums?
Of all the NoFX albums, I wouldn't have chosen this one. But of course I wouldn't. We know what I'd have chosen. But that's. But also, it's that fucking sort of gaseous term pop punk, which doesn't really mean anything.
But also, like, I feel like this is an album that this doesn't scream pop punk to me, and maybe I'm an idiot for thinking that. But I think they've done other albums that feel much more pop punky. I think this,
yeah.
I suppose it's not quite hardcore, but
no, but I know what you mean. But that's why I find the term pop punk to be virtually meaningless.
Yeah, it's difficult to talk about, isn't it? Because you say pop punk to people, and obviously we mean NoFX, Rancid, and you know, well, whoever, Lagwagon. But then, like, you say pop punk to a teenager these days, and they think you mean Knocked Loose and the young ones that I don't.
Well,
enjoy.
I don't even sort of really think of sort of NoFX and Rancid and Lagwagon as pop punk. I've sort of, I mean, Rancid aside, I always thought that was sort of when people said skate punk, they meant 90s US punk that doesn't sound like 77.
Sure.
Basically. Rancid like punk rock, I suppose, you know, that kind of thing. Again, all of this people will be arguing about, and I fucking hate these genre things, but that's why I find pop punk so useless, because it used to mean, to my memory, it used to mean like Green Day were pop punk because they sounded a bit like the Ramones. It was that sort of 3 chords catchy thing, you know, like Screeching Weasel and the Queers and that kind of band. But they're called Ramones Core now. That's become a thing, you know, like Teenage Bottle Rocket or the Lillingtons. Like all of that was pop punk.
Like,
and now it isn't. And so I don't know. This is a bit old man yells at cloud. I get it, but it's why I don't like the term pop punk, because I never know what someone means.
Yeah. And I feel very strongly in, and it's not just localized to music, but genre generally doesn't have to be singular. There seems to be this prevailing belief that something is one genre and one genre alone, and I mean that in terms of like movies, TV, as well as music. I mean, so I am a huge Alien fan. I love Alien. In fact, on the day of recording last night, I watched the extended cut of Aliens and Alien 3 back to back.
Wow.
My girlfriend's very lucky. And
in it,
a lot of people online will do some of the most dumbest arguments. I've seen so many movie forums like have so much discussion over whether Alien is a horror film or a science fiction film. I'm like, guys, it can be both.
Yes. Yeah.
It, I would say it's narratively a horror film, but I don't know. But
But it's about aliens.
Yeah.
Does that not give away the fact it's set on a spaceship?
There's plenty of science fiction in Alien. Like, I just don't think that it's
well, it's
one
like,
or the other.
Well, like Event Horizon.
Yeah.
It's quite clearly, it's a horror movie set in space with science to explain why they're in space.
Hey, look, we're non-binary. We understand that sometimes you're not one thing or the other, but somewhere in between.
We understand the concept of containing multitudes. It's yeah, absolutely. But that's it, and but some people want to break everything up. We sort of go,
the gatekeepers, aren't they? I don't know.
Oh, Social Distortion are a punk band. Well, cowpunk. What? it's punk, but with a country, and it's like, okay, fine. It's all this sort of
genres should only be used as sort of like shorthand labels of how to describe things. So, like, if you're trying to describe them to someone who doesn't know what it is, like, these are quite useful descriptors.
They are, but only if everyone agrees on what pop punk actually means. Because if I said, "Oh, NOFX are pop punk,"
Eddie, what is a woman?
Well, I wish I knew. I've never met one, nor do I intend to. But that's the thing. It can be a lot of things, and that's the difficulty with it all.
You can't define a chair.
You can't.
Like, no one can.
But
you go like 4 legs and a back, and you're like, oh, what is this? Like, is this cow a chair?
Yeah. I don't know what a woman is, but they don't like being called that. Oh, if it was a woman with 4 legs, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Really throw a spanner in the works for the gender specific. But anyway, it's you can't define things too clearly, and I don't think what we can do is say that yes, Pump Up The Valuum, good. It's good, but and I think it signals a lot of changes, and it's interesting that it is a millennium album because I think it shows a marked change in some of the things between the NOFX of the 80s and 90s and the NOFX of the noughties, naught teens, and naught 20s.
Yeah, absolutely. Sign of things to come.
Yes. So, yep, we're over halfway on their album releases now. I think next time there's a couple of EPs before their next full length. Surfer, which is another Fuck the Kids style EP with 14 songs on it that takes about 13 minutes to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
So we should really add something on top of that. And then one after that is the BYO Split Series Volume 3, where NOFX and Rancid cover each other's songs.
That's exciting.
Isn't it? Oh, wow. Interestingly, they don't even get on with it and do War on Errorism after that because they've got their best of, or sorry, not their best of, their rarities and B-sides album to put out after that.
Oh, that's exciting. So we need to have a discussion over what we're doing next, really.
Well, the thing is, the 45 or 46, we've been covering a lot of these songs in the EPs as they come out. So I think the next time we do an EP after that album was released, we might see if there's any songs exclusive to that album and just include them, because we've gone over a lot of those songs already.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so next time we do one of these dives onto their releases, we're going to be doing Surfer and BYO Split Series Volume 3.
That's exciting.
Very, very exciting. So, let's just jump over on into the outro. Well, I think those were entirely correct and reasonable opinions on Pump Up The Valuum, but I am not going back to listen to the episode to check. So we'll just have that. I got a few bits of fan correspondence.
Oh, great.
Certainly, where are we? I'll just get the emails up. From Matt Lane, an email named Golden Boys.
Oh, yeah, about the, yeah.
Yes. said, been binging the podcast since I discovered it and have been enjoying it a lot over the last few weeks.
Great.
I was listening to your conversation about the song Golden Boys recently. I've always loved that song, and I thought I would add something to add that wasn't mentioned in the discussion.
Great.
Before NOFX covered it, the Dickies released a cover version on their album Idiot Savant in 1995, which sounds like it might have influenced the NOFX version. The Dickies version is also great, and you can tell they've taken some elements of it. So almost a cover of a cover. Recommend the Dickies version. It's one of my favourites. Anyway, keep up the good work. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for that insight as well. I really appreciate stuff like that.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't know the Dickies had done a cover of it. I really like the Vagina Dentata version. I've listened to that a few times since we've done that.
Because we're like no more experts than anyone listening to this podcast, I would imagine. You know, we're just two knobheads with microphones. But like, I'm always interested in, you know, the bits that we've missed. So if you do have any facts like that, please, you know, get in touch, share them.
punkrockelitepodcast@gmail.com. Yeah, absolutely. And also a shout out to Timo the Barber.
Oh, yeah.
Who got in touch, and I never mentioned it on the podcast, I don't believe, so I'm going to now. And Timo the Barber, I dropped a sticker in the post for you because it was very easy to track down the address of the place where you work because it's on your Insta account, because that's how you get business. So not weird, everything's fine. But yeah, so you got in touch and you said some proper nice things, and we just completely blanked you. So to apologise, we've sent you a little sticker. I don't know if yours is the sort of barber where you put stickers all over the place, but there you go. Some people have received our stickers. Unfortunately, we're not really in a position to be able to sort of send them out all over the place. But we do have a few. If you ever meet us in person, Red and I will probably have them on our person.
Yeah, should do.
And happy to let you have one. So, but until then, I think that's about it. So we're going to say thank you and goodbye. So we'll see you next time for some sort of interview, or maybe something different. Or just another song. So, yeah, thanks so much, Red.
Thank you, Eddie.
We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Punk Rock Elite. It was a Pick Scraped and Fruitcake co-production by Eddie French and Red Redmond. If you're not following us on Instagram or subscribed to the podcast, please do. The main theme and production was done by Eddie French. Please contact us at punkrockelitepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you.